Hello again, and thank you for joining episode 2 of the Principium Pod. I'm Sean Wilkie, Director of Digital Services at Principium.
And I'm Dennis Prawl, President at Principium. In this episode, Sean and I will recap our recent visits to 2 industry conferences, the INTA Trademark Administrators and Practitioners, or TMAP meeting in New Orleans, and the Intellectual Property Owners Association, or IPO meeting in San Francisco.
We look forward to discussing Dennis's experience at IPO since he was both a participant and a panelist. But first, I'd like to introduce Catherine Leroy, Principium's Commercial Director. Catherine, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Catherine and I were both in New Orleans last week for the TMAP meeting. And it comprises of about 400 trademark professionals, paralegals, attorneys, and vendors from all over the world. While this was not my first TMAP meeting, this was my first time in New Orleans, and I thought they were a great host city, and I thought the meeting overall was quite a success. So, Catherine, this was your first TMAP. How did it compare to other industry conferences?
Well, yeah, it was my first time at this conference, and I felt that it compared really favourably, actually. And it would be great if we could maybe just unpack some of the reasons why. I've got a few actual sort of highlights to talk through about the actual topics and content that was covered. What were your highlights in terms of topics?
Sure. So one thing I really noticed, and because I'm biased towards the digital services side, of course, is that I noticed that there was a lot of talk about social media management and enforcement. I've historically been in the domain name game, and there's basically not much discussion on that. And in fact, one of the tabletop discussions I participated in was about optimizing your domain portfolio. How to, does a company really need 15,000 domain names? Perhaps they could pare it down to 10,000 domain names. What's pushing companies to optimize their portfolios? Is it budgetary constraints? Is it brands that are just no longer used anymore, that haven't been used in 20 years? Is it just general disorganization? So, of course, brand auditing and portfolio optimization is something that we do discuss with our clients on a regular basis, and that's something that we can help with. What about you?
So a few really, like your example, I did like there's sort of a practical nature to a lot of the topics. So first of all, we should mention that there was a great keynote speaker. He was there to talk about Liberty's Kitchen, which was a New Orleans charity that was helping kids from poorer and backgrounds and providing practical ways to get them trained into careers within the hospitality industry, chefing, business ownership, food preparation. They do school meals, they have cafes, they run catering, and he brought along a couple of his proteges, and they were able to speak from the heart about what it had meant, for them. And that was a keynote speech, and he linked it to trademarks by talking about what New Orleans is known for and what it's come to be known for with Katrina as well. And the kids that spoke were really inspirational, and more than one person that I spoke to after that said that they did have a tear in their eye when they were listening to that. So that was nice to hear from them. There were also 2 other kind of non-technical sessions, and they were on personal development. So attendees went along to a talk about their own personal branding. So thinking about ways that they were maybe presenting themselves and what they would like to work with and so on. So the building the personal brand. And then there was another session on emotional intelligence. So there was quite a lot in that session, but it was talking about using empathy as a tool.
Yeah, the professional development sessions are kind of a newer thing for TMAP. And at first when they started doing these a few years ago, I didn't have a great attitude about it, because I said, what does that have to do with trademarking? What does that have to do with brand security, for example?
Right.
But actually, I would say those were actually the best sessions. I mean, and what INTA is really trying to communicate to its attendees is that, having a positive attitude, putting your best foot forward, and just being of service to both your clients and your employers can really take your career a long way.
Yeah, exactly. So sounds like you've been on quite a journey with these sessions. But it's nice to hear that you're feeling positive about them, because I thought they were great, and I could see that the attendees like those sessions as well. So it's good to see them as part of the overall program. Turning just quickly to the industry-specific topics, there was another session on filing trademarks in China, social media that you touched on. And there was a great panel discussion on managing a trademark portfolio, but also managing a trademark portfolio with a limited budget. The guest panel, they were speakers from Microsoft, Merck & Co. and Caterpillar was the other one. They were, senior in-house members of the in-house legal teams, and they all have different challenges and they're different businesses, and they were very open, and they shared things like their organizational structures, how they keep their team members engaged and motivated. And on the particular budget kind of conversation, one of the things that they all had in common was that the internal communication and good stakeholder management was really the determining factor in success when setting their budgets, but also when they have to stay within them. So and that was characterised by, when committing to a budget, they need to know who they can call on to say what might be hitting their desk in the coming fiscal year, and being able to, work with the business to understand what the impact and what the business might need from them and their teams. And also, when they're trying to stay within a budget, it was important that they were able to go back to the business and prioritise together if something needs to be deprioritised at any point, or if they needed to assess the risk of maybe not doing something. So I thought that session was really good, and it was good to hear from the panel on that one.
I mean, with only 400 attendees, I think the general participation in the sessions is quite high, and it's quite interactive, and yeah, I thought it was a success.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was great, and I think they had good engagement. And there's a lot of people that I met during the course of those few days that I'm really looking forward to following up with. Yeah, that was great from my side.
Catherine, it was great seeing you, and I hope to see you next year in Orlando.
Great to see you too. Thanks so much.
Dennis and I will be right back to chat about his takeaways from the IPO meeting in just a bit. And we're back with Catherine and Dennis Prawl. Dennis, how was IPO this year?
IPO was really great, Sean. It was in San Francisco. We had beautiful weather. We had probably just south of about 1,000 people at the conference, 2.5-day conference, packed with really substantive material. A lot of stuff on the patent side and the hard IP side, but also some stuff on the soft IP side. All the featured speakers were great. I have to say there's one guy, Nolan Bushnell, who's the founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, which you might be familiar with because I think you've got kids. And he was discussing his experience relating to startups and the challenges of a startup business. And he was the one who hired Steve Jobs at Atari, by the way. Gave that little anecdote. And also shared with the audience that sometimes you make good decisions, like, Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, and sometimes you make bad decisions, like when he was offered the ability to own 30% of Apple in exchange for $50,000, and he turned it down. So really fascinating chat by Mr. Bushnell. And then we had a lot of seminars, sort of lecture series on different topics. I just wanted to highlight probably a couple of them. There was a great session on online counterfeiting, and like you said with the TMAP topics, online counterfeiting is really the hot topic in our industry because most counterfeiting activity now is going online. You still have the traditional brick and mortar stuff, but most of the distribution channels these days is through online. It's through online marketplaces, and more importantly, through online social media and websites. It's so much easier to move goods through these channels than it is to do it through the old-fashioned way. And it really highlighted the need for brand owners to be using really effective online monitoring tools to detect these uses, sort of like what Principium Strategies offers. Our marketplace watches, our website watches, our social media watches, to make sure that you can pick up any of these attempts to move counterfeit goods through the system. And we also talked about effective measures to combat online counterfeiting. Chief among those, of course, is developing a policy. Every brand owner and every industry and brand owner is going to be a little bit different because different products require different policies. But it's really important to make sure you've got a policy in place and to prioritize what you're going to go after. For example, a really good rule of thumb is when you review the first page of hits for a brand or product, ensure they're all legitimate. Don't go after the stuff on page 7 of hits on Google or Bing or whatever browser search engine you're using. Go after that first page because that's the page that the consumers look at and go to, and that's where the biggest diversion is from legitimate product to counterfeit product. Also had a chat about traditional notice and takedown procedures. Of course, that's been around for a while. There's a panelist from one of the online marketplaces on there. But there's also a newer development called notice and track down. And one of the panelists reminded us of that. China has implemented that. So that means that the online marketplace providers have an obligation, once they're notified of an infringement, to give you information about the details of the person doing that information, not just taking down the listings from the site, but actually giving you some information about how to contact the person behind that. And more recently, it's being tried in the UK. And I think if that type of activity rolls out, it's going to be fantastic for brand owners because half the problem, of course, is trying to find who's doing this. So the track down feature is really a boon to brand owners.
So speaking of panelists, it looks like you were a panelist at this conference. Tell me about that experience.
Sure, I was actually on a really fun panel. We were sort of divided. It was basically trademarks and copyrights in the digital age, and it broke down into sort of a discussion about, again, social media. This is more from the point of view of in-house counsel. One of my panelists was from IBM, and he was telling about how gave a great video, sort of a satirical video of how this one ad agency was going around, like getting people to sign off in the middle of the night, like sneaking things under their pillows, or attacking them as they're unloading their groceries from the back of a station wagon, saying, "Can I have you sign off on this?" So he said it's really sort of ridiculous sometimes. So a lot of that just calls for training. Another of my colleagues gave a chat about right of publicity and social media. And again, if you represent a client whose IP portfolio includes a right of publicity right, then it's something that you should be monitoring for, so that you can make sure that any of these things that are happening out there you're aware of. Another interesting takeaway was the recent update in the FTC guidelines for endorsers. So, a lot of companies will pay celebrities to endorse their products, and the FTC has been going gangbusters in trying to enforce how companies portray these endorsement issues in social media. And so there's been a bit of a shakeup. Recently, they went on a campaign of enforcement, I know, from some companies. and they recently issued revised guidelines saying almost essentially anytime you run one of these social media posts, I mean, I think the only way that you can actually comply with their new guidelines is to have the actor or actress or celebrity wear a T-shirt saying, "I'm endorsing this product and I'm paid to do so." It's no longer good just to have it in a footer or something like that. So that will shake out. But that was sort of an interesting chat. The other part of the panel I was on and the talk that I gave had to do with the new GTLD program and basically where we are and where we're headed sort of look and takeaways for brand owners. What should we be doing now that we're 4 years in or 4 to 5 years into the new GTLD program? What's coming up next? And again, the things I tried to stress was chief takeaway was, as a company, and as you said earlier, establish a proactive domain name registration policy. Look at your stable of 50,000 domains and see how many you actually need. So sort of cut some of that annual spending out of your budget, and also establish a proactive enforcement policy. Make sure that you have a policy that addresses anything that comes up that's going to be facing you, because a lot of things do come up as soon as you start looking at these issues, particularly with domain name infringement. You could spend your last dollar trying to go after all these things, and you wouldn't want to do that. So you have to have a policy in place that's going to say, yes, this is sort of the level 1 issue, or this is a level 5 issue, just so that you have budgeting control over what's going on with your enforcement policy. I also talked a little bit about the Trademark Clearinghouse. Probably still good to enroll in that while the new GTLDs are still rolling out, because you can take advantage of the sunrise registration periods in some of these new GTLDs to the extent that they are relevant to your business. For instance, if you're a bakery, you probably don't need a .bank. But if you're a bakery in New York City, then you might want a .nyc. You might want to sign up for .nyc before somebody else does. So, participate selectively in the sunrise registration periods. Make sure you monitor them. We send out periodic e-blasts to all of our clients about the upcoming registration periods that are relevant generally to the community and more specifically to them. So, make sure you're getting those and can act on those. And again, use a domain name monitoring service. There are still millions and millions and millions of domains out there being registered every day. The biggest risk, of course, more recently, you saw the traditional risks of people trying to set up, sites that mimic yours, or people trying to, distributors or customers trying to set up sites that take your trademark and put them in their domain. But the biggest risk recently is really involving domains used for phishing campaigns. So it's really important to be aware of what's being registered out there so you can act immediately on those things, and to have in an organization the legal team, the marketing team, the IT team, and the corporate cybersecurity teams aligned so that everyone's on board and monitoring these threats and being able to respond to them very timely.
What was the general response among the attendees regarding the new GTLDs in the next round? Is there interest? Are they just, is it more they're just going to ignore the program, or is it kind of the same attitude just like the last round?
Yeah, interesting, because there were a number of people in the room. I was asked to gauge who the audience is, and I would say about half the people in the room, about 100 people, were somehow involved in a .brand venture. So trying to get, .IBM or .Microsoft or whatever. And there's only one person who said they were involved interested in the next round. Now, it's not a scientific survey by any chance, but I think there's still some interest in doing the next round. I did analyze a little bit about what people have done with the .brands. About half of them, and there are about 800 of them out there to date, but about half of them aren't even used at all. And then sort of a small percentage are used as main sites, so there's completely switched over from .com to .brand. A lot of them, more of them are used for sort of events or campaigns or product features or maybe corporate investor sites, things like that. So there's no real rule or real pattern that anyone's established about how to use a .brand. It seems like everyone's sort of, those who have actually engaged as more than just a redirect to their .com site. They're still working their way through it and feeling their way through it. But I also think that in some industries, when your competitors have a .brand and you missed out on the first round, it's probably going to be a company that's going to look to participate in the second round. We talked a little bit about what's coming up in the next round. As far as timing, we could take bets in Las Vegas from here until 3 years from now as to when that's going to be, because ICANN is still working through a lot of the issues that are that they noticed in the first round that they want to address in the second round. And the ICANN process is very methodical, involves a lot of stakeholders, so it takes a while for it to work its way through the system. But probably within the next 18 months to 2 years is the earliest could probably happen while ICANN works through this stuff. There is a conference coming up again in Abu Dhabi in a couple weeks. So they'll be addressing a lot of these issues again at that conference. And we'll see how these things progress. But it's nothing anytime soon, probably nothing this year or next calendar year as far as having to sign up for the next GTLD round.
Dennis, I've got a question on the next round. It's a really interesting topic. I know that there was a fairly significant lobby on the trademark side that helped to get the clearinghouse set up to be part of the the process for the first round of new GTLDs. But there has been some criticism. Do you think they will propose to make any changes to the clearinghouse process in the next round, or is it too early to comment?
There is an active study going on about the clearinghouse and its how it's functioning. So right. It could be that the next round will affect how the clearinghouse operates. There's also talk about the rights protection mechanisms. So they're actually looking at those to see if there should be changes there. So there could be a lot of changes. Right. And they weren't really prepared also for the .brands the first time around because all the rules and regulations didn't apply directly to them. So what they're doing is looking at maybe coming up with more refined categories of new GTLDs in the next round.
Okay, so it sounds like ourselves and our clients will have to really stay close to how things develop over the next few years.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of changes coming up, already a lot of changes. Statistically, as far as, registrations are down in the new GTLDs. Some recent statistics were released. But so you have to really be careful about what you do and consider.
All right. Thank you.
Catherine, do you have anything else?
Well, just one final question on something you talked about at the top of your talk, Dennis. You talked about how certain industries would be wise to sort of work together, and you mentioned the film industry. And I wondered if, combined with your comments about the trial that's going on in the United Kingdom on the, I think you said the internet service providers were able to provide details. I wondered if we might see a rise in maybe new lobby groups to try and get that access in other jurisdictions like the United States.
It would be interesting. The challenge, I think, in the United States is that those sites are not regulated right now. And I don't think that we currently have an administration or a Congress that is in favor of greater regulation of those types of sites. Although with the latest Facebook and Russian advertising issues that are coming up, we'll see maybe there will be some movement there. But I do think that organizations will be lobbying for it. I just don't know if that will have it, in the United States at least, if that will take off currently. But we could see. Ultimately, everyone's in favor of legitimate and good business, and it would be, wonderful if we could get more tools to help legitimate business owners take down a lot of these activities and act against them, because some of them are very dangerous. You have counterfeit pharmaceuticals is a huge problem where people die if they don't get the right drugs. You have airplane parts that are counterfeit out there that are holding together the thing that you're flying on to these conferences. So it's serious stuff.
Yeah, it is serious. Oh, that's good. So it sounds like that might be something else that we want to watch closely as well.
Oh, this is great information. So these two conferences seem like there were a lot of different up-and-coming topics. Catherine and I learned a lot. Dennis was able to participate and also, provide a lot of his expertise. And so, I'm looking forward to the next round of these conferences. And I think this was a great chat. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. That'll do it for this episode of the Principium Pod. We hope you've come away a little more knowledgeable
and a little more informed about the latest trends in intellectual property protection.
We want to thank Catherine Leroy for being our guest on the pod, and we hope you'll tune in to our next episode. In the meantime, please visit us at principiumstrategies.com. Thank you.
The Principium Pod is brought to you by Principium Strategies. Principium has been at the forefront of intellectual property protection for more than a century. Covering more than 180 available jurisdictions worldwide, our International Trademark Watch pairs state-of-the-art, proprietary, customized software with our network of trademark analysts, who then review the results to ensure that you receive only those which will be relevant to your protected brands. Not only does Principium focus on Trademark Watch, but we also have an entire division focused on domain management, maintenance, and online brand protection. Using Principium for your domain and online brand management can save your organization expense in domain registration and management costs while providing unmatched service, protection, and security. We apply our legal, business, and technological expertise to relentlessly protect your brand. To know more, visit principiumstrategies.com. Principium Strategies, the evolution of brand security.